Politico surrenders to woke tantrum by millennial staffers. Now has banned words list. I mean, it's political. What do you expect from this leftist organization? I mean, of course they're gonna have to listen to this nonsense. I mean, I can't stand this idiocracy where now you're not allowed to use words or certain words are off limits because if you're afraid you might offend someone. It's ridiculous. You can't use the English dictionary. But before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button, share this out so we can get this information out there. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that alarm bell so you know when I'm putting out new stuff. Also, check out my link tree in the description. It has a link to my Patreon where I talk about things I can't talk about here. There's also a link to my Instagram and my merch store where I have I Will Not Comply t-shirts as well. So check that out as well. All right, let's talk about this news. As Amber Athey, author of the Snowflakes Revolt, writes in The Spectre, what began as a meltdown over conservative commentator Ben Shapiro, who guest authored the outlet's flagship newsletter in December of 2020, has turned into a complete Lord of the Flies organization with petulant children taking ideas from college campuses into the newsroom and pushing the editorial line further to the left than ever before, as Athey describes it. Excuse me. A few months after the Shapiro meltdown, a March 2021 article by political reporter Gabby Orr about how Republicans have positioned themselves as defenders of women's sports against transgender athletes was the next shoe to drop. The internal revolt which followed marked a sea change in how the publication reported the news. Orr was then dragged into a meeting with offended colleagues. They said, as a source briefed on the situation explained to me, Orr was informed by Politico's director of editorial diversity initiatives, Robin Turner, that two colleagues had voiced concerns about her story. Turner wanted to arrange a meeting to discuss them. During the meeting, Orr was asked about her employment history at the Washington Examiner, a center-right outlet, and asked why the story omitted any transgender voices, though it had extensively quoted Kate Oakley, senior counsel at the Human Rights Campaign, an activist organization dedicated to LGBTQ plus issues. Orr's colleagues also complained that she quoted conservatives such as American Principles Project Director Terry Schilling and former White House policy advisor Stephen Miller without contextualizing their comments. So now you got to contextualize people's quote comments. It's ridiculous. Schilling had promiscuously praised left wing activists for their ability to convince the American public that transgender people were facing a wave of violence, even though when, quote, you look at the numbers, it's like 40 people. Or, her colleagues argued, should have explicitly told readers that those remarks were offensive and transphobic. That was from the Spectre. So saying a fact like it was like 40 people is offensive, so you can't even name facts now because it destroys your narrative. Anything that destroys their narrative offends them. One meeting attendee was offended by the phrase biological women, which appeared a grand total of 3 times in the piece and was deemed offensive to transgender readers. Again, I don't get what's so offensive about saying biological woman. They want you to use the term cisgender, I guess. Now, even though biological women, it's a term that doctors use. It's ridiculous. And following the meeting, Robin Turner, the outlet director of editorial diversity, suggested the offended colleagues be crowned, quote, sensitive readers to ensure that Orr wouldn't cause further offense to sensitive readers. This is just nonsense. 6 months earlier, Orr had written a 5,000-word political cover story on the same subject, trans athletes, which drew zero internal complaints. According to Athey, however, it was a, quote, bad-blooded Zoom meeting about Shapiro guest editing playbook, which emboldened progressive staff to start pushing back against articles that didn't pass their woke purity test. Then things get worse. On July 2nd, 2021, Politico brought in three transgender individuals that thought would help the newsroom learn to report on transgender issues in a quote more comprehensive and inclusive way. In another Zoom meeting, they lectured reporters about the inherent transphobia in their reporting. In an email Athy obtained from Politico editors summarizing the highlights from the inclusivity sermons, reporters were told that a quote neutral position on transgender issues likely came from white cisgender men and therefore should be assumed to be inaccurate. What's more, gendered words can be rooted in exclusion and can cause trauma for transgender and gender neutral individuals. All this stuff is ridiculous. So now words cause trauma. According to one former Political reporter, the panelists complained that the word mother could potentially be offensive when used by reporters. So now we can't use the word mother. The trans activists also mock reporters struggling with the grammatical implications of referring to people by plural pronouns such as they, them. That's another term that I hate. If I get a client that want me to use it, I will accommodate. But in my personal life, I don't use that term at all. I don't put no pronouns in the bio and none of that stuff in my work bio, personal bio, none of that stuff. Quote, so many non trans journalists get caught up in the meaning of certain words that they don't realize that many ways that a certain word can mean different things to different people, and the ways in which various languages carry trauma and carry triggering motivations for folks, and how other feelings about the meaning of certain words are rooted in exclusion, said Travell Anderson, the editor at large at Extra. What? I mean, it's nonsense. I refuse to change the English language just so I don't offend someone. But the panelists warned journalists that they cannot simply cover both sides of the transgender issue because they might be elevating transphobic voices. Quote, the job of journalists historically always has been to speak truth to power, and it's a violation of journalistic ethics to entertain any conversation that paints transphobia as legitimate, Sachin said. So now it's transphobia if you use uh, 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 English correctly. What do these folks consider to be anti-trans or transphobic? Sosin has said that the phrases biological male is an anti-trans slur. So you can't use biological male. And it's transphobic for women not to want to share a bathroom with men. Howie complained on Twitter that they were called sir on the phone by a FedEx employee. Anderson has described bills banning biological males from women's sports as anti trans legislation. Factual language, honest mistakes, and reasonable concerns about deep rooted biological differences will not be tolerated by the trans lobby. Um, and that was from the Spectre. According to one source, the gender discussion was a gateway triggering, causing colleagues to argue over terms such as birthing persons versus birthing moms due to potential offense. I mean, it's so convoluted. You don't even know how to speak now. But the woke mob then tried to unionize, according to a former staffer, which, quote, was merely an extension of the woke crowd showing their true colors after the Shapiro firestorm. The Daily Beast even called them out, questioning whether they were the woke police, following concerns expressed over the effort. So let's talk about the banned words. Several weeks after the transgender sermon, Political appointed a new standards editor to oversee editorial content, former White House correspondent Anita Kumar. Under her, a new 2022 style guide was implemented, which includes a list of non inclusive words deemed verboten via the Spectre. Can't say mankind, can't say man made, can't say manhunt, can't say crack the whip, can't say waiter or waitress. Server should be used instead. Biological gender, biological sex, biological women, biological female, biological man, or biological male, illegal immigrant or illegal alien, cakewalk, originated during slavery and thus perpetrates racist motifs. I've never heard that before. So they, I don't know where they get this stuff from. In reference to illegal migration, onslaught, tidal wave, flood, inundation, surge, invasion, army, march, sneak, and stealth, anchor baby, chain migration. This is a term used by immigration hardliners. Peanut gallery, the cheapest seats often occupied by black people and people with low incomes. I mean, how many black people I know use peanut gallery before? This is ridiculous. Third world countries is too derogatory. I mean, this is ridiculous. The guide also warns reporter not to say a transgender individual identifies as a certain gender or to describe the border crisis as a crisis because, quote, while the sharp increase in the arrival of unaccompanied minors is a problem for border officials, a political challenge for the Biden administration, and a dire situation for many migrants who make the journey, it does not fit the dictionary definition of a crisis. Are you kidding me? These people are loony. Quote, generally avoid references to a transgender person being born a boy or a girl and opt for phrasing such as identified at birth as boy, girl. The guy cautions, quote, a person biology does not take precedence over their gender identity, and such oversimplifications can invalidate the person's current authentic gender. Well, you say that to a doctor that's trying to help someone, and you have to know their biology. So now you can't even say that. Um, Reporters should also consider using gender neutral language like pregnant people, wow, or people using birth control, as there are non female identified people who are able to become pregnant, require reproductive health care, etc. Oh, and unlike black, white should be capitalized in any instances. As Athe notes towards the end, quote, thanks to the constant complaints by woke staffers, transgender coverage at Politico now reads like pure propaganda rather than well informed and reasoned reportage. That's exactly why I do not read Politico anymore at all. Years ago, it's been years since I actually, well, no, I take that back. I have read certain articles from Politico, but I don't like go out and search for like I don't go out and go to politico.com for stuff. And something might pop up on my feed and I might read it, but I rarely read Politico now because of this woke stuff. It's just ridiculous. But let me know what you think. Leave your comments down below. Like, share, and subscribe, and check out democrepublics.com for the latest in news. Until next time, peace.